Ewe sanibonani babukeli sinamukele kuhlelo Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right. Siyanamukela sisakaza kubukhoma khona la kumahamba phambili phela SABC 1 eMzansi for sure. Mina ngingu-Alisha intombi yakajali. Nikhumbule babukela senivaleli ngaphandle phela nani ningakhona ukubamba iqhaza odabeni lethu esobe silidingida namhlanje. Uyazi izingcingo zethu ungasishala ku 011 7146918 noma 7146919. Ungasithumela i-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za or catch us on Facebook now with Twitter. Udaba lethu namhlanje mbukeli, the death of a loved one, particularly the main provider in a family, can leave behind a trail of disaster. We are all too familiar with the family conflicts that emerge when a loved one dies. And often the source of these feuds by surviving family members is, of course, inheritance. That is why we are always reminded of the importance of planning for what will happen to those left behind in the event of death by drawing up a will stating clearly how assets must be shared among those left behind. Asibukena ngumbiko.
Ukwenza izicwangciso zamafa eziyalela indlela yokwaba impahla yongasekhoyo iwill ngolwasemzini isiyindaba yakwamkhozi ingakumbi kubantu abantsundu. Oku kusuka mandulo nalapho imicimbi ephathelele ukucwangciso nolwabiwo lamafa ibe ngeyonto ingxamisekileyo nebalulekileyo. uLeonard Pule noyinhloko yeofisi ejongene namafa kwinkundla ephakamileyo yaseGauteng, iMaster of the High Court, uthi ungenziwa kwezicwangciso kubangela ingxaki. Iofisi yakhe ayinathuba lokuphumla ngenxa yokulawula imicimbi yamafa edalwe kukungenziwa kwezicwangciso ezifanelekileyo. Kulo nyaka uphelileyo ibingaphesha kwamawaka angama-30 imiba yamafa efike kwiofisi yakhe. Uninzi lwayo iphathelele kubantu abangakhange bacwangcise amafa abo.
Issues that are normally coming through to the office will be issues pertaining to disputes in relation to especially immovable properties, a dispute in relation to a relationship with the deceased, because most of the complaints of or those particular disputes will be to say, you, the master office, you have actually appointed someone that actually is not related to the deceased.
Kwimeko ezinjalo le ofisi iyenyanzeleka ukuba ichonge umuntu omele usapho lalowo ungasekhoyo ukuba mayibe nguye owabayo. Okwa ikwenza ngendlela ehambisana nomthetho. Le ndlela inengxaki ezithile kuba kukho iziganeko apho umuntu ochongiweyo aphela eqhatha abo balindele ukuxhamla kweli lifa. Nto ethi maxa wambi idale inkqwithela phakathi kwezizalwane. uJilifisakhe noliqhutha lamafa uphethe umcimbi ofana nqwana lowo. Apha umninikhaya zange enze umyolelo obhalwe phantsi oyalela ukuba makwenziwe ntoni ngekhaya losapho. Lowo kwakubhaliswe ngayo elikhaya nobengahlali kulo phofu wasuka walithengisa washiya abantu akwabo bengenandawo yokuhlala. uJili uthi ukuba lo ungasekhoyo ebebhale phantsi umyolelo ngoma kwenzeke ngelikhaya losapho ngeyingekho ingxaki.
You must leave a will, and you must seek advice when you're doing a will, because even you must be very careful how if you do leave a will, how you decide who your heirs are going to be and what they are going to inherit. Because the last thing you want to do is to have, if you've got 5 children and you leave your house to them, to leave a house to 5 children. Then in other words, there's going to be 5 owners of the house. That just creates a whole lot of discord.
Uthi enye ingxaki enkulu kuxa indoda ishiya wakwayo engakhange imbhalise ngokwasemthethweni lwakwakhe akanalungelo lokuxhamla kwilifa elishiyiweyo.
The problem that we find is that people are not married. They think they are married, particularly if they think they're married. They've paid the lobola and they've done the ritual, all the processes as far as your rituals are concerned. But they are not recorded at the where they should be recorded, the lobola marriage. That means that they're not married in terms of the Intestate Succession Act. And if you're not married, you can't inherit in terms of the Intestate Succession Act.
Ukuze ungagaxeleki kwimeko ifana nezi sezikhanganyiwe, icebo ukukhawuleza ubonane neengcali zokucwangcisa izinto zamafa. Iinkonzo zokwenza oko zifumaneka emagqutheni, ezibhankini kunye nakumaziko ancedisa uluntu ngezinto zasemthethweni. Uvuyisile Mdoda, Yilungelo Lakho.
Sibonge kakhulu ngalombiko siudidiyelwe nguvuyisile Mdoda. Manje ukukhuluma kabanzi ngokubaleka kokuthi sibhale phansi amafa asamukela izivakashi zethu sinayo sisiya Watshela ongumeli siphinde sibe nawo Penelope Roberts yena oyi-Deputy Master of the South Gauteng High Court. Ladies, a very good afternoon to you. Senamukela kuhlelo Yilungelo Lakho.
Good afternoon.
Ladies, let's first understand what is a will. Yini ifa noma i-deceased estate? Uthi ngiqale ngawe sisi.
Okay, i-will i-document ebalulekile kakhulu la umuntu azobhala khona phansi ukuthi ufuna ukuthi umuntu lo ozobamba impahla zakhe makase ashonile ukuthi ziye kubo bani, and then uzabhala ukuthi uzofuna lo muntu kube ubani nabantu la kumele bathole lezo impahla ngabo bani. So i-will ngathi ibalulekile ukuthi abantu bayazi ukuthi bangayenzi nje because inelona ama implications. For example, bangathenga lama will yabona la e-shop elona e-CNA bawagcwalisa mara uthole ukuthi umama for example uthi umntana abhale leyo will, ama legal consequences ukuthi lo muntu obhale leyo will ngeke akwazi ukuthi athole lezo mpahla. So kubalekile kakhulu ukuthi leyo will iyenziwe umuntu ongumeli or nama bank bayawayenza lawo ma will. So yona iyenza ukuthi I will umuntu masashonile ilethwa la kithi e-Master of the High Court la si register khona, so that si appoint lo muntu afuna ukuthi sim appoint. And then ke siyenze ke cause thina si supervise ama estates sibheke ukuthi loyo muntu usebenza ngalo ngomthetho ukuthi la abantu lababhaliswe kuleyo will bayathola lama assets la kumele bawathola.
Sisiya njengommeli ubani umuntu ongakwazi ukuthi a-draft i-will afike kwenathi ucela ukuzodrafta i-will?
Anyone can have a will. Like you can go to a CNA and go and buy one. But the question is, CNA and go and buy a will that is already made, whereby you just fill in the complete, whereby you just fill in information that's missing. Does it suit in its zako? Because you should remember in Dukmana, it will. Basically, you're trying to convey wishes zako, but also like a kwam, wishes zam is that this and this must happen. Do you understand? So nabanina, for as long as you are above the age of 16, you can have your own will.
Wow.
And as long as you know that you've got the assets, and the assets, and how do you want to distribute those assets upon your death. And it also becomes important, you must have a will, especially when you've got minor children, because will, when it comes to the distribution, because remember those people, they don't have a say. And if you do not have a will, like Mrs. Penny has just advised, then what it means is that upon your death, then the estate will vest upon the master, and the master will have to distribute all your assets according to the law. But remember that law, it does not have your needs at heart. It was just drafted to administer the process. But when you do have your own, your own wishes. So do you really want to be in a situation whereby you die and iwili yako yenzeke assets zakho zehlulahlule ngohlobo ungakhange bimingqondo yakho? And another thing, kuthi sinabantu bamnyama indaba ye will, it's a bit taboo because
it's a taboo issue,
of
yes.
its challenges esinazo. Firstly, xa udraft will ingathi uyazihlolele into but why?
Will ngesandla sisi
you can. You have to put it in a very safe place. But my advice is that when you're drafting it, you must have somebody who's going to be looking after the legal implications, like Mrs. Penny Beselechil. Because if you are a drafter, you want to draft it so that after you have died, your court, your challenge. Another thing that you must bear in mind is that do you know the costs that are involved to go to the High Court? We're talking about 60,000, 80,000 to challenge a will, because you must have the advocates, you must have the attorneys.
Exactly. I guess why is it so important for one to ukuthi abe ne will? Noma ngathiwa unemali eningi, noma nje umuntu osebenzayo, why is it important to have a will? And usichazele futhi i-difference, because abantu abaningi bacabanga ukuthi will ilama policy lawa abawathengayo.
No, i-will kubalulekile kakhulu ngoba sengishilo awufuni i-situation la maso ushonile abantu balwe ngempahla zakho. That's why ufuna kumele ukuthi uyenze i-will. But ma uyenza leyo will kumele nawe ucabange ukuthi unabantwana njengoba usisashilo ukuthi abantwana abancane labo kumele bakhula ngisho basaya esikolweni kumele badle lezo zinto ukuthi ubalungiselele. So i-estate planning, it's very important, ibalulekile kakhulu. And then kumele umuntu abheke first of all ukuthi ushade njani, yabona, because kunama legal implications.
True.
If nishade in community of property,
Nesithembu
uyazi ukuthi
as
it's
well,
one
it's a
joint
different
estate.
thing.
So if umyeni wakho or ashona, or example, or umfazi wakho, you are only entitled to have share in terms of that marriage. The other part, if agna will, must go in terms of interstate. So which means if ungayenzanga iwill, umthetho uyangena ke uyadecide ukuthi impahla zakho kumele ziye kubabani. So the first person would be surviving spouse, umyeni or umfazi wakho.
Okay.
And then if nabantwana ke bayabhekwa ke, but kuya ngokuthi i-estate imalini.
Usichazelele interstate.
Yes. So if i-estate ingaphezu kwa-125,000 for example, ne, usurviving spouse uzawuthatha i-half in terms ye-marriage, and then athathe nelona ke i-125,000 or the child's share, le salayo imali, it gets divided equally kulaba bantwana.
Yona interstate.
Yes, but
okay.
Another issue, kune customary marriages, angisho sikhuluma ngabantu ama-African, so uthole ukuthi bashade ngesintu ne, and then sinomthetho i-recognition of customary marriages.
Ngicela usichazele mesibuya ebreaking sisiphenele uphendula imibuzo ngisathi ngisazoyibuza mbukeli ake sithi shelele ezitolo ungayindawo le ndaba ibhekene nathi sonke ikakhulukazi emakhaya sihlale sizwa ngembango emva kokushona komuntu. Sithinte lapha e-studio ku 0117146818 7146819 usendele email ku consumer@sabc.co.za. Catch us on Facebook noma ku Twitter, siyabuya khona manje. Sikwamukele futhi mbukeli, ungasithinta ngocingo nge-email noma ku Facebook na ku Twitter njengalaba abanye sebenzile. It's time now ukuthi ngifunde ama-tweets. Ake sibone la uma-tweets ukuthi nisibhalele nathini la kwilungelo. All right, while we're still waiting. All right, ubulelani Gifted Zila uthi that's interesting, akachazanga ukuthi usho mayelana nani. Masiya James Ninwa, I would love to hark on the topic. All right, Umushabi Pahlana uthi you very informative guys, keep up the good work that you're doing. Thank you so much. Usipho Ayikabi, ngicela ukubuza ukuthi munengane yentombazane kodwa ungashadile nomama wayo, izinto zakho zisala kuyona uma ufa mase kushona yona zizoshonaphi? Izinto zakho kuba ezokomalume wayo noma zibuyela kini? Ayikabi, niyam understand ubhuti sis? Because I think basically he says he's got a baby daughter. Now he's wondering what ukuthi kuzokwenzakalani in the event that uyashona, and then what happens to those assets. Zizoya kubo kwamntana komalume bamntana noma zizobuyela kumntana. What happens in that case?
Ungaqhubeka sisiphele. Njengoba bengishilo ukuthi kumele ayenze will, if akayenzanga then i-interstate succession umthetho ungena into the picture, uyamdecidela ukuthi impahla zakhe zizoya kubani. So yena akashadanga, so unomntana, so obviously umntana uye ozoba yi-heir ku-estate. But then just ukuthi kungabi nama disputes, kungaliwi between abantwana bakabomalume nabo bani.
The advice is
ukuthi uyenze
will.
It's very important.
Sisi awusichazele kabanzi i-life policy, the difference ne-will. Awusichazele please.
I-life policy, when one takes out a life policy, that person is buying a peace of mind. A peace of mind in such that can't feel what's going to happen. In terms of like there's going to be some money that's going to be there to cover for it costs the family. A life policy has got nothing to do with a will. But with some life policies, but in fact a majority of them, these are a beneficiary form to say that should you die, who do you appoint as a beneficiary? That's helpful because if in a life policy and you have appointed a beneficiary, once you died, then at least the beneficiary kicks in. But if you've got a will, in will yakho, you're listing everything that you have, including the policies, including other things, because like I said, that beneficiary form, you can fill it in and give it to your whoever who's running your policy, or you don't have to. So it is just like indaba your pension funds, when you start working. When you start working, they give you all those forms, and then part of the forms that they give to you is to say, remember there's an issue here, your retirement or a pension here. If it happens that usweleke wasusapangela, then we've got to pay out these monies.
Okay.
Do you have somebody that you can appoint as a beneficiary? If you have appointed that person, then at least you're covered. But if not, then that does not mean that the fact that you have appointed a beneficiary does not mean that you've got the will. But if you do have a will, in your will, you're listing out everything that belongs to you. It might include the policies, it might include the house or houses that you own, it might even include your clothes and your household equipment, like whatever that you want to, whatever that you have.
Material.
Everything that belongs to you and how you want to distribute it. Because you can even put conditions to say that how are they going to, what are the conditions for being able to inherit. So those are two things. The fact that you've got a life policy does not mean that you've got the will.
Got a will.
But if you've appointed someone in that policy as a beneficiary, at least you are covered. But bear in mind that there are some other assets that could have been covered, we will, of which they are not covered with life policy.
And another thing, your life policy, if wayenza wa nominator a beneficiary, so that policy will go in terms of interstate succession,
to the estate.
And that policy, those funds bazowa freeze, bazowa bamba until a master of the High Court appoint a executor or a master's representative, so that by a policy institution to withdraw Lama funds.
Let's talk about, I want us to understand, Sis Penny, where your office fits in, because most people don't know what's the first thing to do when a person dies, and apparently they need to go to the master of the High Court. Please explain the relationship.
Yeah, actually, the Master of the High Court is under a Department of Justice. We have components, but we are under that component. So we are in the business of supervising deceased estates. That's the bulk of what we do. So umuntu magashonile and umuntu ashonile anempahla noma angenempahla, mele i-estate yakhe izo-reporta e-ofisini, and then we will appoint a master's representative if i-value yama-assets ingaphansi ku-125,000. If ingaphezulu si-appointa i-executor.
What if engena lutho?
If angenalutho, then but
because I'm sure abantu abaningi bayasaba ukuthi uzoya kobheka ukuthi umuntu beshiyeni kanti uzothola sehlangene nezikwelete ezishiya umuntu, and they didn't even know about it. Is that another thing ocabanga Sisipheni ukuthi iphusha abantu ukuthi bangayinaki lento yama will nama estate ukuthi kwenzakalani umuntu meseshonile?
Ngicabanga njalo because abanalwazi actually ukuthi
knowledge abangenayo kahle.
And just to add on, and it sometimes happen that ufumanisa kunobana umuntu uswelekile, and then while that process your master ibe khona ku appointwe umuntu to be an executor. When this person is being appointed as an executor, all the creditors, they want for security to say that should we be unable to recover whatever money that has been owed by the deceased, then somebody would be in a position to. Nobody wants to be in that position of standing of giving security in this process.
But why? Responsibility for anything.
And we exempt that party security. Whoever that has been appointed as an executor, he does not have to do that process here security.
Okay.
Exactly.
And the executor
appoint master, the creditors, they can ask we want a security to this executor.
I see.
Exactly.
I see. So that's when they dissolve or actually divide your assets.
And sometimes you sign this security form, and now liabilities are too much. The estate, for example, died is insolvent.
It's insolvent, yes. What does it mean? What does then the court do in terms of and they've got absolutely nothing? What then happens?
Angisho umthetho uthi i-estate yomuntu oshonile kumele i-report within 14 days. If abayi-report within 14 days, any interested party kungaba yi-creditor ngoba ngisho naye une-interest in the matter ufuna imali so angakwazi ukuthi naye ayireporte leyo estate so that naye ayenze lo msebenzi simu-appointe so that afind out ukuthi abobani futhi ama-creditors and ama-creditors they rank ngama-loan in order of preference kunama-secured creditors like ama-banks imali yabo kumele ibhadalwe before anyone else yes before bona bangathola
so before abantu benza umbango they actually need to understand what a person has because balwela imali engekho at the end of the day. All right, well Mbukeli, it's time for another ad break. Masihlangane masibuya etolo ungathi siphinde sikwamukele Mbukeli usabheke uhlelo Yilungelo Lakho khona la kumahamba phambili SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. Sisaxoxa ngendaba yokubalileka kokushiya ifa elibhaliwe sithinte ku 0117146818 7146819 usithumele email ku consumer@sabc.co.za usithole futhi na ku Facebook na ku Twitter. Thulani from Orlando eGauteng sakwamukela ohlelweni.
Yebo kunjani sisi?
Siyaphila bhuti wami sicela uqhubeke ngombuzo.
Yebo sisi bengicela ukukhuluma nosisi wase Master of the High Court.
Yebo uqhubeka bhuti nangu sisiphenele ukulalela.
Yes sisi ngine problem na actually this show ibhekene nami exactly. Ngeke ngasubmita iwill elento eMaster of the High Court. And then uma ngisubmit iwill and then some other people beza neyabi iwill. But what happened is this iwill yabo it was forged. And then I was told that I must find a lawyer and I'm a handwriting expert. But now, ama lawyer masengwatholile nama handwriting expert uma baya lapha eMaster of the High Court bathi bayo expect ama will. Bathola ukuthi bathi file lahlekile. So now as the file lahlekile default kabani because le will le lama will manje abasakwazi ukuthi bangakwazi kwa expect but on my position I have ama copies awale will yalobo bantu nabo ne will yami. So manje eMaster of the High Court ama original awasekho alahlekile khona so makukanje ifault kabani mele ngenzeni mina.
Siyabonga Bhuthula sicela ulalele kumabona kude wakho ne?
Okay.
Siyabonga bhuti.
Okay, into yenzekayo masithola ama-will ama-original will imaster kumele ithole i-original will thina siyayibheka nje ukuthi on the face of it iya-comply ne-Wills Act which means it must be signed i-page enye nenye lisayinwa umuntu oyenza i-will utestator and then i-last page kumele isayinwe ngama-witnesses so if i-right on the face of it then siyayi-registera siyi-accept ne and then if kunomuntu oyi-contestayo one-dispute ngayo normally kumele e-high court and then i-high court yiyo ezoyenza ke i-court order yokuthi si-accept or si-reject yabona and then normally kuza nama-handwriting expert njengoba yes ukuthi bazo authenticate leyo signature ukuthi yakamufi na
zonke lezi zinto zicosta malini lezo zinto
i-high court application is very expensive yabona ifuna i-lawyer umail from there iya ku-advocate
kodwa ke sisi njengoba uyachaza ukuthi he's got all the documentation he's not at fault and it seems yonke into is been verified yipi inkinga uzosizakala kanjani
ama-wills siwafayila separately ine-wills la silokha khona because ama-documents labalulekile kakhulu so asiwafayili nama-files it's a different process leyo i-will ihlala ikhona ku-wills register iyona akunakuthi ingalahleka so if ubhuti unenkinga angeze azongibona directly so that ngimsize further.
All right, okay. Bhuthula uyamuzwa usisi Penelope uthi uze uzombona yena ngqo e-office lakhe inumber zakhe zizoba khona la screenini wena phatha nje ipen lakho nephepha. Sis Maria sokwamukela from eGauteng.
Sawubona mama.
Siyaphila siswami sicela uqhubeke ngombuzo.
Okay, ngimbuza ngicela ukubuza ifetheli nje i-customary marriage nomuntu and umuntu ebeshadile nonkosazakhe.
Sicela ukuphakamise izwi sisa sikuzwisisa kahle. Sis Maria.
Ngicela ukubuza ifetheli mhlambe nginomuntu oshadile ne? So njengoba shadile lo muntu lo ufike nje ekhaya wathi uyalobola senza i-customary marriage saba nephepha lamalobolo. So bengicela ukwazi ukuthi mhlambe makwenzeka something ngayo asinasayidini.
Siyabonga kakhulu sis Maria how uyishaya entweni bengithi ngizobuza lo mbuzo kahle kahle which is exactly where we're going with this segment ladies in terms of traditional contracts where does the master of the court fit in Kusetshenzwa kanjani sisiphele?
Usisi uthi ushade in terms of customary marriage.
Yeah.
Kukhona umthetho uthi yilona Recognition of Customary Marriages Act.
Okay.
And loyo mthetho sufunda futhi ne Reform of Customary Law of Succession Act. So into yenzekayo le Act ye Recognition of Customary Marriages Act, it was yango 1998, so implementwa ngo 2000. So ngo 2000 i-Department of Home Affairs iye yavula isikhathi ukuthi abantu laba bashade ngesintu bayo register lama marriages.
Okay.
So ke into yenzekayo thina as the Master of the High Court uthole ukuthi one of the spouses uyashona, let's say ubaba or umama, so bayeza la e-office kuzo reporter i-estate. Thina kumele ke sibheke kuqala if they are saying ukuthi bashade ngesintu, into esifunayo i-agreement, it must kubhalwe phansi ilobola agreement. Angisho kuzoba nama representatives from both families, kubo baba nakubo mama, bavumelane ukuthi abantwana babo bayashada. Yes, so ke sifuna lama witness laba sign kuleyo agreement beze nabo bazo confirm ukuthi ngempela bebashadile.
Okusho ukuthi umthetho omusha lo sisi, ngoba ngiyacabanga ukuthi before abantu bebeshada nje kukhokha amalobolo usuthathile. All right, okay, asithathe uThembi Nkosi from David. But Thembi Nkosi siyakwamukela ohlelweni, qhubeka ngombuzo wakho. But Thembi Nkosi usekhona line? All right, I think we've lost Thembi Nkosi. Now, what right does let's say there's a marriage here and there's no formal divorce. It's probably one of those customary marriages as well, but there's a separation and nobody went to go and say, right, we're signing off that we've been married. And the guy moves on and has children and a new wife. What happens when the father dies? What happens to the new wife and the new children and the old wife and the old children?
For as long as they have not divorced formally, that marriage is still recognized.
Wow.
So which means that the wife who's now no longer staying with the husband or the old husband, unfortunately, if it's intestate, there's no will, then the Interstate Succession Act will apply to say that we first look at who's the wife. And that wife is still recognized for as long as there's nothing to prove that they are divorced.
But then in traditional culture where men can take more than one wife, and I mean, you don't necessarily have to divorce from them like legally. What happens in those cases? How does the law protect either the new wife or the old wife?
Njengoba sengishilo ukuthi kune Recognition of Customary Marriages Act, all the wives because customary marriages does allow a polygamous marriage. Ubaba angathatha abafazi abaningi, so it does recognize that. But lo mthetho, it was implemented ukuthi kukhusele lama rights walabo mama ukuthi in the past they were just sidelined ukuthi they were married in terms of customary marriages, but now ngoba lo mshado is recognized, nabo banamalungelo, so they will inherit from that estate.
We don't even want to talk about in community of property in those marriages. All right, Mbugela, City futhi Pinda sithathe ikhefu. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back Mbugela. Ukuzokalisa imbono nembuzo sithintela ngocingo. Izivakashi zami ngummeli uSisiya Wojela, siphinde sibe naye uSisi Penelope Roberts, yena uyi-Deputy Master of the Gauteng High Court. Sixoxa ngendaba yokubaleka kokwenza phela ifa elibhaliwe usaphila ukuze labo obashiyayo bangasali bexabana ngempahla yalowo ongasekho. And it's a very, very embarrassing thing to see people actually fighting over estates when they actually don't even know what the assets were in the beginning. All right, we're going to take some Facebook messages now. Let's take Utandeka Matandi Gaba. Uti, please help me with this. My father was married previously and he got divorced. His kids from a previous marriage are all grown up and are working, and I've never met their mother until last year, meaning she's been gone for almost 20 years. Now my father has passed on last year, June, and my father's ex-wife comes and claims to have rights over my father's things, and her kids are abusing my mom, but my mom is still legally married. They've been taking money from my father's businesses and all that, selling my father's stuff. What should we do? All right, I think, Sis Penny, you mentioned something very important during the ad break, that whether the kids are grown or from previous marriages, those people are that guy's child. They still have legal rights to whatever their estates are. Please go ahead and explain, how can we help her?
Especially when you know that this is never left a will. So labo bantwana banelungelo lokuthi bayenze. But then I also touched on something, a separation. It looks as if, because she also mentioned Guti, she didn't see the wife for 20 years.
Yes.
So that's the thing, Guti, you know, they might have been separated, but not legally divorced, where the court would have issued a decree of divorce.
And
so she would still be married
earlier.
in terms of the law. She would still be recognized as a surviving spouse.
Even with the new wife, but how can the law do that? Isn't that bigamy?
No.
As long as there's no degree of divorce.
Really?
It's still recognized.
Very, very insightful there. Let's take Eric Bila. Says, my brother passed away and he was not married during his passing, but had 2 children with different mothers. He was a breadwinner here at home since he was an elder brother and having source of income. In fact, he was a breadwinner out of home ever since both our parents passed away. But now my question is, GEPF has paid the money to Master of the High Court. I want to know whether the Master will pay the funeral bills that is still owed to the funeral parlor that helped us bury him. And secondly, I have a letter of authority, executor of the state. Which or what step must I take now? Sis Penny, that's all yours.
Yeah, he mentions the first point about the government employees pension fund, especially in a scenario where we've already spoke about if umuntu angabhalisanga ukuthi ama beneficiary ku pension fund abobani, so leyo mali ke izaya ku guardians fund if leyo estate is
especially if the children are still minors, then it will be kept in a guardian fund until they reach an age of majority,
18.
Wow.
where they can have access to the money.
Okay, but in the meantime, what happens to those kids? How are they funded for livelihood?
The guardian
It's allocated to the guardian.
can apply ku Master of the High Court. A South Gauteng High Court, we don't have a guardians fund. It's a Pretoria North Gauteng Master of the High Court. So bangayenza ama application for a daily allowance yomntana, because at the end of the day umntana kumele aye esikolweni adle lezo ndleko zonke.
Sis Penny, how come we don't know any of this information? How come that information is not readily available to the public?
Well, it's in their website, www.justice.org.
Sis Penny, website.
But also this issue that she has touched on the issue of guardian. For example, if those kids are still minor children, the next question is, who's the guardian? People would take it for granted in Dubana just because sister Rakushikili, that sister have got to be a guardian. But what if there is an interested party? Because at some point in time, when you're dealing with these issues of guardianship, you can involve the social workers, because somebody else can even make an application to the court to say, I want to be appointed as a guardian. But when you do that application in court, there are some kind of things to substantiate your position, and also to convince the court that indeed you can be appointed as a guardian to these people, to these minor children. Because clear situation yabantwana abasezi minors, it becomes really critical. That there's got to be somebody who looks after their interest, because kenyani la mala izuphuma until izahlala pha ku guardian fund, but there's got to be somebody ozaw assista so that daily needs zabo zibe taken into consideration. And bamnyama, we take these things for granted.
We do.
I've got an extended family, they can be taken care of me, but when somebody dies, by issue.
Another thing, Sis Penny, people that are employed by an employer, and that employer won't release the funds or whatever UFA funds that they were actually taking from this person. What happens in that case? Shouldn't they also be declaring those assets to the Master of the Court? They will.
By law, they should. And then another issue that I would like to also touch on, if in an estate kunabantwana abancane ba under 18 of age, each chief master sign a service level agreement ne Legal Aid South Africa, so that kulama estates ku appoint ummeli, because ummeli uzokwazi ukuthi akhusele protect ama rights walabantwana, so that yes, when they reach that age of 18, at least kuzabe nomuntu obheka ama interests wabo.
How would you then look after the children in terms of livelihood yabo as the appointed attorney there, SABC?
If you appointed, basically there's a whole lot of things that one would have to consider in terms of, like, for example, their schooling.
Yes, absolutely.
What are the
vital.
fees? What are the fees that are involved? Even the place that they are
That they
looking
live
at,
in,
they are staying at. Bahlala kwindawo enjani? Are they being taken care of? Because I mean, we've heard lots of stories. Apha kuthi bantu bamnyama into mana abantwana bangenamzali. Ufumanise into mana abati. I'm sure you've even seen it on Cutting Edge. Abakhathalelwanga mntu. Those are the kind of things that has to be considered when somebody is looking for the interest of the child, so that you can decide to say that kule situation, this is what is got to be, this is what is got to happen.
But that will only happen in the event that umtu actually took the initiative wayibhala that will, so that your children can be taken care of.
Ebhalile wa appoint kule will yakhe wabhala umuntu ozawujonga abantwana bamosuleka kwam ngubani and if ubani usoleke before mna okanye usoleke bengekafiki age of majority, then somebody else, you understand?
Okay, so you nominate my options.
Exactly. It becomes easier to administer the process. True. Uba, okay, banbani appointiwe, if usolekile, then banbani would take over. At least it becomes easier. We take things for granted. No matters, no extended family. Yeah.
And the extended family in most cases, they're not abatati best interest of abantwana. It's a very rampant issue. All right, Mbugela, asithathe ikhefu lethu lokugcina. Siyabuya khona manje. Sikwamukele Mbugeli to our last segment njengoba phela sekusondele amaphethelo ohlelo. Asithathe uSithembi Buthelezi, ngiyacabanga ukuthi uzoba umuntu osifonela wokugcina namhlanje. Sithembi, umbuzo wakho.
Yebo, ngifuna ukubuza bosisi ukuthi esimeni lapho ubaba ethethe unkosikazi kanti le ingane ngaphandle azithola wangathatha omama bazo basuke by 2 3 kanjalo kuyaphezulu, ufuna kenze njani ngale ingane? Le will makayibhala as include ingane lezi ngaphandle, ngoba isikhathi esiningi gcina seyibangisa lo mama seyifika zofuna imali noma ngayinikeza nanga bakwakufona kwazo masayiphelile bantu babuye bazocebula kumkhoma. Bukwenzeka kanjani? Kufanele asibhale mas under 18 ubhale omama bazo le lapha bangashadaka nabo or inhloko zomama kwenzeka kanjani lapho? Ngiyabuza.
Siyabonga kakhulu Sithembu, ulalele lapho kumabona kude wakho. A very important question as well, and which is what we generally talk about. These are the kind of people that actually deal with these things on a day-to-day basis. Sis Penny, the answer ka Sithembi.
Yeah, yabona iwill kumele ayenze. It's a freedom of testation. Kuya ngomuntu vele ukuthi ufuna ukuthi
you're not compelled by the law to draft a will.
It's your choice.
It's your choice.
But then to make your estate planning easier, it's imperative. It's very important ukuthi ube ne will. So ubaba ngababhala if uyafuna. It's a choice that he has to make.
All right. So there's no legal clause that says you have to include all your children in a will. You can actually leave them out of the will. Remember, that's what starts in Bangomos.
Remember, a will, it contains wishes.
Wishes zakho. Very true.
Exactly.
Very,
so
very
if awufuna abantu ba inherit.
But then what would lead to a will being contested? I think this is a very big question, and I think we had a caller earlier on who's actually going through this process, and we don't hear much because if people have to contest the will, as you mentioned, the process is expensive and long. So people don't want to opt for that. All right, but before we do that, Sis Penny, let's read some more Facebook messages. Zanele Njela says, kunomakhelwane wamla umkhwenyana wakhe wayebhala ingane yabo emafeni inomuzi ubhalwe ngengane kodwa abafowabo kamufi bayabanga bathi umuzi kwamfowabo bahlala khona ngenkani khona iwill, so uanti kumele enze njani? Kumele ayongqonqoza kumuphi umnyango ukuze athole usizo?
Meleze ofisini yethu kuloje leyo original will kureport i-estate si appointe lo muntu lo abhaliswe ku will ukuthi kube nguye othatha ama assets wakamufi ukuthi awa distribute kulabantu bakumele bawathole.
Okay, so those people have no right ukungena ngodli bazofuna izinto ezishiyiwe.
Another thing is Penny, the period of death and the period of registration of the will, because it's not something that's highlighted.
But what happens then? What is the process?
They must still report it. Angisho umthetho uthi they must report it within 14 days. In so many cases, abantu abayazi ne office yethu, they don't know ukuthi bokumele ba report estate. But then we don't turn away anyone.
Exactly.
They must still report bazise naleyo will so that we can register it.
All right, we're going to take our final person on our final viewer on Facebook. Uzanele Caesar says, ngaba kubalekile ukumazisa umuntu ombhalisile kwi will yakho na? Very, very interesting. Very interesting to know that, if you're nominated, you might get killed for being the person that has nominated this person. Is it relevant though?
It's a choice yomuntu. Uthole ukuthi abantu, for example, bashadile ne. I had a scenario where bashade in community of property. So bahlanganele impahla. So the husband went and wayenza iwill wangamtshela umfazi. So washona. So umfazi uza ukuthi why umyeni wakhe angasitshelanga ngithi, but then bekuyi-choice yakhe. Yes.
It brings us to the question that you asked earlier on to say what would result in a will being contested. Like things like that. Some other people, they might feel aggrieved of the fact that why am I not included? Some other people might feel that the fact that you are a witness in this will,
but
you are a witness.
Can you go and actually contest?
You are a witness and a beneficiary. Then there's something dodgy. Like also there was another caller that
about the signature.
Exactly, that was saying that the signature was forged.
Signatures.
So it's a number of issues. It's a number of issues that would raise eyebrows to say that.
Okay, so best advice now, ladies, in both your independent professions, please give us the advice that every consumer should know right from today.
Okay. Well, umuntu makashonile, it's very imperative ukuthi beze e-Master of the High Court ba report estate. If kune original will beze nayo, so that we can appoint lo muntu lo bhalisiwe, or if kunangana will, we'll appoint the nearest blood relative, and our services are free of charge. Masi khipha leyo letters of authority or letters of executorship depending ku value estate. So it's very important.
All right. Cecilia.
From my side, the advice that I would give to the consumers is that it's important to have a will so that you can avoid all these fights. And people always think that yes, a will, like dealing with lawyers, is expensive, but there are other organizations that assist. For example, there's a pro bono organization that assists people for any other legal issues, including drafting wills. There is one pro bono organization that's here in Johannesburg in Bramfontein.
Is it free
at the
of
Constitutional
charge?
Hill. It's free of charge, but not for everybody. Like people, they work out the means test to say, can you afford a lawyer or not?
Okay.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. So it's like legal aid.
Exactly. There's a legal aid that can also assist. And even the Law Society, every September, the Law Society goes out there. We as lawyers, we do assist the community members to draft wills. For example, most of the time you find them in courts.
Yes.
Like September is just a month where we contribute our services to the community. Most importantly for drafting wills. Those are the kind of things that people should use. But in some other instances,
do you go to magistrate's court?
Magistrate court.
Which is where the bulk of everything actually happens, as you mentioned. So Babugeli, please understand, uma nifuna usizo mayelana nomuntu oshonile, the first thing to do uyaya lapha ku magistrate's court uyofuna imbuzo mayelana ne master of ilokhuzana i-high court. Alright, mbukeli ngebhadi ke sesifike emaphethelweni ohlelo lethu. Ngithanda ukubonga izivakashi zethu ngokusipha isikhathi nolwazi labo namhlanje. Sibonge nani babukeli ukuthi nibe nathi kuze kube manje. Siyabonga ngama Facebook messages, ngama calls enu. Please join my co-presenter Usisanda, join us next week Friday for another live consumer topic of the week. Ukuthola impinde ezinhlelo zethu asihlangane khona la kumamba phambili SABC 1 Mzansi for sure every Monday morning from 9:30 kuya ku 10:30 for myself Alicia Ntombi Akajali and the entire team and crew. Nsale kahle.